As you know, Walker Buehler is leaving the Dodgers, signed with the Red Sox. A true Dodgers legend. We're going to dig into his contract, his best moments of Dodger Blue, what he means to the franchise, all of that. So let's get live on Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And in this case, your team is the World Series champion, Los Angeles Dodgers. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers, you can make it easy on yourself by subscribing wherever you're watching or listening right now. If this is your first time with us, my name is Jeff Snider. That guy next to me is my co-host, Vince Samperio. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like most of you. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room, so we bring you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. And Vince, I guess first we want to welcome those of you who are with us live. We know that this holiday season, there's a lot of times stuff going on in the evenings. And so, but we figure for those of you who are looking, either already looking for an escape from visiting family who are in town, or just, you're not quite ready for Christmas yet, so you need another Dodgers conversation. Here we are live to talk about Walker Buehler. Vince, you talked about Buehler some this morning. It was kind of a, it's kind of interesting when you have an episode planned and then big news breaks. So we're going to dig more into it. But I guess what's your, without repeating yourself too much from this morning, what's your gut reaction to this?
Yeah, it's one of those where I think on the episode this morning, I kind of talked myself through why the Dodgers, didn't necessarily need Buehler, or why it kind of makes sense for all sides. So, initially it was like, oh man, that, I did want him back. And then when you find out the price, you're like, okay, Dodgers probably could have done that. And then when you kind of sit and realize, it's not just the Dodgers' needs, it's Walker Buehler's needs as well. And, I think showcasing himself on a team that more needs him than doesn't is kind of where I've settled at. But ultimately, it was just thinking a lot about Walker Buehler and, kind of like, damn it, even though it was kind of a weird last season, there's still so much that you can look back on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that we got to this point after how bad most of the 2024 season was for him and how done we were a few times. I do think that's a good point you made, that even with even if the Dodgers had offered him the same contract, I think he might have chosen to go to the Red Sox. We don't know what the Dodgers offered him. If anything, we assume that there were, at least conversations. But the fact is, the Dodgers do have a lot of starting pitchers, and hopefully enough starting pitchers. The Dodgers, the other night I recorded an episode of Locked On MLB with Sully that's going to air on New Year's Eve. It's his tradition every year to talk with one of the hosts of the World Series winning team. And so I just penciled that in for New Year's Eve every year for the next 6 or 7 years. But I was telling them, I think the Dodgers' new motto is going to be, there's no such thing as too much starting pitching. And, because of that, from the Dodgers standpoint, it would make sense to bring Buehler back. But from Buehler's standpoint, knowing that the Dodgers are potentially are going to have 9 healthy starting pitchers, at least at times during the season, it's like, maybe the 6-man rotation isn't what's best for him. Once he realized he was going to be taking a 1-year deal, a kind of a make good deal, a prove it deal, and hitting free agency again next year, it might not make sense to him to be in a 6-man rotation or to be a 5th starter or a 6th starter, in the situation. Whereas with the Red Sox, he has a chance to have a huge impact in a big market, all those things that could boost his free agency value next year.
Yeah, and he can continue to terrorize the Yankees if he really wants to. So, like I said, ultimately, the Dodgers, it's a luxury. If they would have had Walker Buehler, for the Red Sox, it's a little more of a necessity. And, for Walker Buehler, I'm sure he had some multi-year deals on the table, maybe not AAV of 21 million or whatever it was, but for him, he's going to bet on himself. He's a guy that is, always going to believe in what he has and what he can do. And, I hope it works out for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can all agree that we want the best for Walker Buehler. He may pitch against the Dodgers. They will, I think the Dodgers play in Boston in 2025, one series. So maybe the Dodgers face him. We'll have to see. I guess one other thing to touch on to finish off this segment, and then the rest of the episode, we'll probably talk mostly about how much we love Buehler and some of our favorite memories and all that. You mentioned the $21.05 million, which is exactly the amount of the qualifying offer. I think that's not a coincidence, like that they did exactly a qualifying offer amount. I don't know the reasoning behind it, but we know the Dodgers didn't make a qualifying offer to him, and the Red Sox gave him that contract that it would have been. But one thing to remember is that because of the Dodgers luxury tax situation, signing Buehler to a $21 million contract would have cost them $44 million, because where they're at right now, every dollar they spend now is taxed at 110%. And so a little more than double is the cost of everything they spend right now. And, that's not really how it works. Like, it's not like, oh, Buehler's the one that's expensive. Everything just goes up by some, it's all spread out. But realistically right now, anything they do add is more than doubled. And so it's with 21 million probably being a little bit of an overpay anyway for Buehler, and maybe a lot of an overpay depending on how he bounces back. 44 million, I think we can all agree, if you look at it from that point of view, probably would have been too much for Walker Buehler at this point.
Yeah. And like I said, it's the way to look at it just personally right now, just because it's easy to calculate.
Yeah, absolutely. And, all of the things that we talked about, the reasons why Buehler might not have wanted to come back to the Dodgers because of that, the glut of starting pitching and all that, is stuff that might appeal to Roki Sasaki, a 6-man rotation, less pressure on him to be the man. And Roki Sasaki, if the Dodgers sign him to the league minimum, yes, the league minimum for them will still be more than for anybody else. The $750,000 will still be, $1.6 million or whatever, but it's still, if the Dodgers were looking at it like that, okay, we need one more starting pitcher. Should we do Walker Buehler or Roki Sasaki? Obviously, they don't know for sure if they're going to get Sasaki, but I think probably all those considerations come into play for the Dodgers for sure.
Yeah, like we said, the Dodgers' money will never be an issue for things of need. They could, decide. It's more a return of investment instead of just, any team could spend, as much money as they want, and it's not always going to work out, or it's just not the most return that you can get.
Yeah, absolutely. But we are huge Walker Buehler fans. We have loved his time as a Dodger, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about some of the things we love the most, some of our favorite moments from Walker Buehler's career in Dodger Blue. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. I love sports. I love concerts. I love comedy shows. I've been doing a lot of shopping for tickets for Christmas lately. And the one thing all those things that have in common is you can get the best price on tickets on Game Time. Game Time has a feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. I almost said favorite 5 events, which one of those is a word, but favorite live events. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. You also have the option of turning on all-in pricing, which will show you the total prices up front with no surprise fees at checkout. And with the Game Time guarantee, you'll always get the lowest price, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets to your favorite events with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. We are back. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Thanks for being an everydayer if you are. If you're not, it's easy to become one. Just watch and listen every weekday morning. You can make it easier on yourself by subscribing wherever you're watching or listening right now. Please, if you're on YouTube, please subscribe there. We would love to get our YouTube subscriber numbers bumped up. We've had good response the last couple of weeks as I've specifically requested that. So if you're not yet subscribed, please click that button right now. For your second listen, be sure to check out Locked On MLB, hosted by our buddy Sully. As I mentioned, I will be on his episode that will drop, I believe, on the evening of New Year's Eve. We may put that up here on our channel too as a bonus episode, or maybe even one of our episodes for next week. We'll see, but you can definitely find it on Locked In MLB. You can find Sully over there talking about all of Major League Baseball. Be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles over on YouTube. And let's talk more Walker Buehler. Vince, obviously, I think Walker Buehler may be something that a lot of people don't get to do. His final moment as a Dodger on the field was probably his most iconic moment as a Dodger too. He had some great moments that we're going to dig into, but finishing off the World Series, his pose of defiance after he did it, even I mentioned this on Twitter. I don't know if you've noticed, Vince, but Smith and Buehler had a perfectly timed leap, which a lot of times in the celebrating a big postseason win, pitchers and catchers have a lot of awkward moments where one will go for a hug, another one will go for a chest bump, and they end up, all over the place. Smith and Buehler both went sideways for the hip, and they reached the same height, landed at the same time. It was really good. I don't know if it's a Kentucky thing or what, but and just that final moment for Walker Buehler in Dodger blue, absolutely a pretty epic way to go out as a Dodger.
Yeah, you can't ask for anything better. And, as we talk through this episode, maybe, we'll get to a point of asking, will one day Walker Buehler have a statue at Dodger Stadium? And it'll depend on how deep the Dodgers go with statues. It's kind of hard to decide on it, but what cooler statue could you have of Walker Buehler's pose when the Dodgers won the World Series? If it starts off a string of a bunch of championships, maybe.
Yeah, or at least a bobblehead of it. And that's something I saw someone mention on Twitter, that this might mean that we don't get that Buehler bobblehead next year. I wouldn't be surprised if they still do it. Because Buehler's still going to be a fan favorite. It's not like there's any animosity. They didn't leave on bad terms, as far as we know, as far as we've heard. I was thinking about that, kind of a tangent here, but, obviously we're going to get a Freddie Freeman holding the bat above his head after the Grand Slam bobblehead next year. That seems like a no-brainer. But the Buehler one seems like a no-brainer. I've been trying to think what other bobblehead-able moments there were in the postseason, because there are obviously a ton of great moments. But anything else jump to your mind as obvious bobbleheads for next year?
No, they'll for sure do something 50-50 with Ohtani. I feel like if the Red Sox were coming to Dodger Stadium, maybe they would have it. It's just not that there was animosity or anything. I think it's just more precedent rather, at the moment. I don't think they've ever had one for somebody that's not currently on the team, that has not retired or whatever. But trying to think what else would stand out. I don't know. There's a lot of different things. But definitely an Ohtani 50-50 one. Maybe
I imagine we'll get 3 or 4 Ohtani bobbleheads next year.
Yeah.
An MVP one, and maybe 2 different 50-50 ones, one of a stealing a base, one of hitting a home run. Yeah. I think the Dodgers will probably cash in on that cash cow for sure.
Yeah.
But back to Buehler. So, if we agree that winning the World Series is his most iconic moment in Dodger blue, what other moments come to your mind? And we'll figure we just, go back and forth, talk about a few of them.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about some of those standout moments, and I'm sure there's one, but the one for me is one where a game that I was at, it was game 163 in 2018, and it was a very good start against a Rockies team that, it still feels weird to think that the Dodgers went to game 163 with the Rockies, 6 years ago now. I guess it's been a while, but it felt weird. But that was Buehler's first full season, and he kind of took over that role of, okay, that's when I first started believing this is the guy that's going to win the Dodgers the World Series. At that point, it was 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17. So 5 years straight in the playoffs. The Dodgers hadn't got it done. And, as much as we love Kershaw, there had been some moments where it just didn't work out, or he was, done in by his bullpen or done in by managing or whatever the case was. But that was the moment where it felt like we're going to win a World Series because of Walker Buehler.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a tense game. That whole season was frustrating because the Dodgers were much better than their record and they just weren't playing up to their capabilities. But you remember all summer long, like everyone was like, well, if the Dodgers can get in, they're going to be a dangerous team. Nobody wants to face the Dodgers in the postseason. But then it's like, but they got to get in. And, finishing that season, obviously, even if they had lost that game, they would have gone to the wild card game. But that's a totally different situation. And Buehler's pitching, obviously Muncy's big home run late in that game to kind of put it away was huge. In that same year, one of the things that kind of jumps out to me is his very first postseason start. And it's kind of an interesting one to think of because it sucked. He got the loss. He didn't, he gave up 5 runs in 5 innings. But what I remember, remember that second inning, he just lost it. He loaded the bases. There was a walk and then 2 strikeouts and then a single and then an intentional walk because there was an error on the single. So it's second and third. So then they intentionally walked Charlie Culberson to get to the pitcher. Figure, okay, we've got 2 outs, bases loaded. Walk Culberson, get to Sean Newcomb, the pitcher. And then Buehler walks the pitcher on 4 pitches to drive in a run, first run of the game. And it's just like, seriously, Buehler, and this was before we had postseason legend Walker Buehler. This was his very first postseason start. And then Ronald Acuna comes up and it's a grand slam. And it's like, oh, and like that moment. And, the Dodgers ended up coming back and winning the series. So no harm done. But before that, in that same game, after the Acuna grand slam, Walker Buehler retired the last 10 batters he faced. And that, to me, I feel like something clicked in his head when he gave up that grand slam and he realized, I think that's when he became Walker F. Buehler. Like, they can't do that to me. And he shut down the Braves the rest of that game. And basically from then on, the rest of his postseason career, he was dominant. And, so that's why that one jumps out at me, even though it was a loss. But I think that's his origin story. That's your Batman Begins for Walker Buehler, I think.
And he ended up giving the Dodgers 5. Like, I think that was the other part of it is you get past that. You don't give up any more runs. You give the Dodgers 5 innings. Like, we hadn't been used to – I guess we had been used to maybe 4 or 5 innings and 5 runs from, starting pitchers at that point. But, we'd been used to guys melting down and not getting through that inning or not getting through multiple innings. And that kind of led into it. But the next one for me is Game 6, NLCS 2020, and specifically the second inning. He got through the first inning scoreless. The Dodgers put up 3 runs, coming back from a 3-1 deficit, and you're like, okay, good, like 3-0 with Walker Buehler on the mound. Like, it's starting to go the way that we want it to go. And then 3 straight singles start that inning, and it's bases loaded, nobody out, and you're like, oh man, like here we go again. Especially like, for the Dodgers having, lost World Series in 17 and 18, and then, being upset in the NLDS in 2019, and now you're like, okay, 2020, now we're about to lose it again. And then, Walker Buehler just dialed it up and just started rearing back and firing. He got 2 strikeouts and I believe a ground out to end that inning. And the Dodgers, a lot of more things happened in that Game 6, but that inning could have easily got away from it. The Dodgers could have lost, momentum or whatever it is, if you believe in it. And it could have been differently and they could have not won that World Series. So I think, Game 6 as a whole, I think he ended up pitching relatively well, but specifically that second inning was where it got, he had to go 6 shutout innings. But yeah, that second inning for sure.
Sorry, was I muted?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, that for sure. We've got more Walker Buehler to talk about, so we'll come back and dig into more of our favorite Walker Buehler moments and look ahead to the future. So thank you for making it your first listen, and please keep it locked on Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. You can bet on which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, so many thrilling options. You can also just bet who's going to win the game. And I always like to look at the NFL odds and see if there's a good option for you to place your first $5 bet that you're likely to win so you can get your $250 in bonus bets. This coming weekend, you got the Eagles and the Cowboys. The Eagles are minus 490 favorites. The Bills are minus 500 over the Jets. The Bucks are minus 450 over the Panthers. So there's a lot of pretty strong favorites here. Pick one of those, put $5 on that team to win. And if they do, you will get $250 in bonus bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We are back. Thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen. Thanks for being here live with us. Just a little note on our Christmas schedule. This is technically the Christmas Eve episode. We're doing it late the evening of the 23rd, but this is our December 24th episode. I assume, Vince, and maybe we should talk about this before we start recording, but I bet it'll be pretty easy. We'll probably record something during the day tomorrow and just premiere it sometime on the evening of Christmas Eve for a Christmas Day episode. It won't be, obviously, unless some major news breaks, it'll be more of probably a looking back on the 2024 season and, the great season it was. And, maybe mention that I watched Freddie Freeman's Grand Slam another 11 times today. We'll dig into some of that. So, and then after that, we'll definitely have episodes this week. But, we'll have to play it by ear on whether we'll be live. That all sound good to you, Vince?
Yep.
Cool. So Walker Buehler, my next moment from Walker Buehler that I wanted to talk about was his shutout in April of 2022 against the Diamondbacks. 9 shutout innings, complete game, 3 hits, no walks, 10 strikeouts. Just a dominant game. But also maybe the beginning of the end because if you look at it, he hadn't been super great his first 3 starts. He was okay. He had a 4.02 ERA on the season coming into that game through his first 3 starts. But then he had the shutout, and then he had 5 scoreless innings his next time out, and then 7 innings, 1 run his next time out. So in those 3 starts, his ERA went from 4.02 to 1.96. And you're like, oh, Walker Buehler is back, baby. And, he had just finished second in the Cy Young voting the year before, all of that. But then his final 6 starts of 2022, he had a 6.67 ERA. Some of it was bad luck. His FIP was only 4.88, but his FIP was still 4.88, which was, it was 2.98 before that. So, definitely took a downturn. And then turns out he was hurt. That ended up being Tommy John surgery again. So it's one of those bittersweet ones because I don't know how much you remember about that shutout, Vince, but in that moment, like that was such a cool moment as a Walker Buehler fan because he, they let him, he threw 108 pitches. We don't know if that's why he was hurt, but they kind of let him go deeper, felt like he had earned that privilege. And also he'd only thrown 79 pitches his previous start. So, they let him go deep. And it was just a really fulfilling moment as a fan that in hindsight, it's like, maybe not the best idea.
Yeah. And like I said, it was one of those where he was struggling that entire season up to that point. And, we were kind of trying to figure out what it was. And then, maybe that might have been what it was. And then that was kind of and that could have been like the grand exit, like the last real like moment we had with Walker Buehler. Cause, during the 2024 season, we really only had that 1 start against the Reds where you were like, oh yeah, that's legit. And then after that, it was just kind of like, yeah, maybe you don't want to see Walker Buehler pitch again, but ultimately he ended up he did pitch again, and it worked out. So
yeah,
I mean, with Buehler, there's a lot to get into. I mentioned the game 3 performance in the World Series, but it is one because it's great, part of like the greater moment, and it doesn't maybe get remembered as much because that game ended up going 18 innings, and you remember a lot of different things, and maybe not the fact that Walker Buehler had shut down that 2018 Red Sox team for 7 innings, a team that was essentially a juggernaut that season offensively, and kind of steamrolled through. And while the Dodgers were very close to making it a 2-2 series, ultimately the Dodgers lost in Game 5, and a 5-game series win is a little bit of sign of dominance there. So, but yeah, 7 shutout innings for it. That's the first time you thought, okay, maybe the Dodgers do have a small chance in this game. And just the way he did it, racking up 7 strikeouts, just 2 hits, like it was complete and utter dominance. And you thought, oh, maybe the Dodgers do have a little bit of a chance. And if you can get back to once you started counting in Game 4 when the Dodgers went up, and you're like, well, if they can get it to, one more win, then they guarantee to get it to Game 6. You get it to Game 6, you get it to Game 7, and Walker Buehler is going to have to pitch at least one of those games. So, it was, but Game 3 for sure was a standout.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was his first World Series start. He ended up pitching in 4 World Series games for the Dodgers, 3 starts, and that 1 inning to close out this year's game. And if you look at his postseason stats, he just got better and better the deeper you get into the postseason. He pitched 1 wild card game, allowed 2 runs in 4 innings, so a 4.50 ERA. Pitched 5 division series games, had a 4.10 ERA. 4 NLCS games, had a 3.15 ERA. And then 4 World Series games, 5 division series, 7 games total, and then 4 NLCSs and 7 games total. But then in 3 different World Series, he pitched in 4 games, had a 0.47 ERA. He allowed 1 run in Game 6 against the Rays in 2020. 6 innings, 1 run allowed, 10 strikeouts. That was his worst game in the World Series. A World Series clinching victory in which he allowed 1 run in 6 innings and struck out 10 batters was his worst World Series game ever. That kind of tells you everything you need to know about Walker Buehler as the big game World Series stud that he was for the Dodgers. And, it's a bummer to me that because of his multiple injuries and everything, I don't think there's enough time, even if Buehler bounced back to being everything that he could be. I don't think there's enough time left in his career to build a Hall of Fame resume, but that World Series resume is absolutely Hall of Fame worthy.
Yeah, it's not quite the same as Madison Bumgarner and Walker Buehler, but similar enough to where they were very good in the regular season and then just turned it up a notch and had some. Bumgarner had an incredible postseason run where Buehler's had maybe a little bit bigger of a stretch, even though Bumgarner had other times when he was good. But 2014 is what you remember the most about him. And Buehler, like I said, we've already talked about a few different moments for Buehler in terms of postseason pitching. So
yeah, the fact that his 4 World Series games were over a stretch of 6 years, that's something that very few pitchers, especially in the modern era, have matched, when it's a lot harder to get to the World Series than it was back when, say, Whitey Ford and Sandy Koufax were pitching. But yeah, just I don't know. This one, it was bittersweet for me. I understand from the baseball reasons and why the Dodgers don't have Walker Buehler on their team anymore. Like I said, it's not even just up to them. That's the thing about free agency, is the player gets to choose. It might have just been a better situation for him. Or maybe it was just that the Red Sox offered him more money. We don't know. We may find out. We may not. Zach Greinke is the only free agent who ever really told it like it was when it comes to why he signed with the team. But yeah, from a fan perspective, I love Walker Buehler, and everything about him, his competitiveness on the mound, his friendship with Clayton Kershaw, everybody loves Walker Buehler who's played with him. He is a teammate that everybody loves. He's fierce. He's, I hope that he pitches well. I don't know how much of this postseason run that he went on this year was because he figured things out, and how much of it was adrenaline and all those things. I'm interested to see how he can do over a 162 game season next year. But I really, really hope that he pitches really well. I hope he rebuilds his value and gets himself a 5-year, 6 figures, 7 figure, 8, 9 figure, something in the hundreds of millions. I can't count figures, 9-figure deal. He, even with this contract, he's up to like $50 million he's made in his career, which is not nearly enough for a guy of his talent and his moments in baseball. And so I wish him nothing but the best with the Red Sox, except if he pitches against the Dodgers. But all in all, it's pretty sad to see him go.
Yeah, ultimately, it is sad to see him go, just for the fan fact of things. We always have to think of things in different ways than maybe we normally would have in the past. So it changes perspective a little bit. But I did mention that, hey, if the Red Sox are not good, you never know at the trade deadline. If the Dodgers need a starting pitcher, you never know.
Eat some of that salary, Red Sox.
Yeah. It's not that wouldn't be the first time.
Yep. Yeah. In fact, because we have obviously Kike Hernandez came back. We've had a few Dodgers. I think Kike is the only one who came back after going to the Red Sox. But we've seen Matt Kemp make his return. I wouldn't. It wouldn't shock me at all to see Walker Buehler back in Dodger blue at some point. But right now, he will be in Red Sox red. I guess is a thing. So good luck to Walker Buehler. Thanks for the memories. Thanks for the yeeshes. And I will always be a big Walker Buehler fan for sure.
Yeah, and I think one real quick thing. I think the fact, obviously, that the 9th inning in Game 5 we'll remember. And I think it helps because it has the moment of, the different celebration. It has the moment of everything else. It has the moment, a little bit of the defiance. He had the quote post game. But then we got the story about the 9th inning. And then we got, what would Kirsch do, or what would 22 do? Like it added to the whole lore. So like there's a whole, like when when I tell my kids, you tell maybe your grandkids about Walker Buehler down the line in the future, like there's a whole story of that 9th inning that you can build out on top of all these other things that we talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like Clayton Kershaw in 2016, except on a bigger stage, and just, really, really cool story. And so much of the fact that, like you said, everything that went into it, talking to Ben Casparis about it was cool. Just really cool moment as a Dodger fan. I think that'll do it for us for today, right?
Yeah.
Thank you all for being here with us. Good crowd here for Christmas Eve night. We appreciate you being here with us live. Thank you to our everydayers. If you're not an everydayer, just watch or listen every weekday morning, and then you are an everydayer. You can also check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, 2 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. You can also go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Text directly with us, get our thoughts on moves as they happen. And we are working on setting up a Discord server for our insiders. So another little perk of being an insider, go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. We are on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSense91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog, and both of our DMs are open there. You can also email us at lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or send us a voicemail or a text message to 323-863-LOCK5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play a podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Have a good one.